Okay, now we can begin.
All right, now we can begin. I'm going to take my seat behind the table, just so I can sit down. My name is Mike Kramer. I am a longtime adjunct at Borough of Manhattan Community College in New York City, where I teach primarily communications and theater. I am in Ken's presenting group as someone who deals with performance studies and medievalism. We're today going to have a roundtable about, even though it's not round, about the adjunctification of the field of medieval studies. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first one is Ken Monsheim. Ken is a scholar and jouster who teaches currently at Westfield University.
Do I know?
We're going to say that you do still for the moment.
All
And he has a new book out.
Not out yet.
Or just coming out. There should be a reader's copy in the book room called Game of Thrones and the Medieval Art of War. And that's by, what's the press?
It's McFarlane.
McFarlane. To my immediate right is Clifford Rogers from the United States Military Academy at West Point. He's a military historian, and he is the senior editor working on the West Point history of warfare. To my left is John Dempsey, also of Westfield University, who is not currently working on any projects, but he said to me he has tenure, which is better than a book.
I had a choice.
And Larry Swain from formerly Bemidji State University, now independent, and his new book is Alfred of Eynsham, Letter to Seward, and it's by Wheaton Press. And via Skype, hopefully, will be Philip Adebayo. He is a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from, boy, I had it written down here. The University of Ibadan. And he is a senior fellow at the French Institute for Research in Africa, and his interests include media and ethnicity, transnational justice, and ethno-religious conflicts. And what we're going to talk about today is how the field of the humanities in general and history, medieval history in particular, are affected by the ever-increasing use of adjuncts, and how being used affects those adjuncts, because it is definitely being used. I'd like to, the first thing that I want to talk about, and I want Cliff to begin this discussion, is what we mean by adjunct. When we're talking about adjuncts, let's be definite. Let's have a definition and what we're talking about.
Yeah, so let me explain a little bit why I'm on this panel not being an adjunct. In fact, never having been an adjunct unless you use a quite broad definition of it. West Point is unusual in that we don't have any adjuncts in the again, it kind of depends on how you define it. We have it in our faculty manual that we can, but we don't. So one of the reasons I'm here is to say that it is impossible, or that it is possible to not have adjuncts. Particularly to not have adjuncts in the sense that I think that most of us think of when we talk about the adjunctification of the profession, which to me, I mean, you've probably seen the statistic that something like 70% of the faculty in academia now are adjuncts. But that includes graduate teaching associates, that includes a certain number of people who are what adjuncts I think were really created for in the first place, although this was a long time ago and it's not what many of them are now, but some still are people who are have a professional qualification, maybe more than an academic qualification, and teach, you know, a course while they're being lawyers or accountants or whatever, and they teach a little bit on the side because they want to, mainly. And that category also includes people often, well not often, but it does include people who have, for example, retired from an academic job in one place, moved somewhere else, and want to keep their hand in. So there are lots of different types of people who are technically adjuncts as it's, or contingent faculty as it's defined in that survey that came up with that statistic, which, like I said, I think most people have probably seen that, especially if you're here at this panel. It also includes people who are, for example, visiting professors, right, who have a 1-year or 2-year contract, maybe a sabbatical replacement, something like that. So all of those are technically adjunct faculty, but many of them are not what we tend to think of first when we talk about adjunct faculty, which at least, well, I don't know, I shouldn't say we, I don't know what you think of first. What I think of first when I hear that term is somebody who has a recent PhD or maybe working on a PhD and can't find a permanent job, a full-time job, or some combination of those two, and is teaching a course here, a course there, paid by the course, maybe at more than one institution. And as context for the rest of the discussion, I thought I would point out a few numbers. I like numbers, like most medieval historians. No, well, wait, no. Anyway, this is a lot of what I'm going to tell you is based on a big survey that was done in 2010, so it's a little out of date, and it's also problematic because a survey self-selecting respondents may not represent the reality very well, but at least it was a really big survey, so it gives you at least sort of a ballpark sense of things. And the data actually were not really what I was expecting to see. So I think they'll help contextualize everything. Now this was just among the 10,000 or so respondents who were part-time faculty. So this doesn't include the people who have like a 1-year or full-time slot. But among the people who are doing this part-time, about 30% have a doctorate. I would have thought it would be more than that. And only about 30% said they were looking for a tenure-track job. And only about 30% said they taught 2 or more courses per semester. That was the most surprising thing to me. Only about 15% said they taught 3 courses a semester, and 7% taught 4, and 7% taught 5 or 6 courses per semester. And only about 22% taught at more than one institution in a semester, in the previous semester. So, to me, the people I worry most about are the ones who are teaching for courses a semester, or 5 or 6, God forbid, at more than one institution.
That was me, yeah.
Yeah, so I
That's
worry about
currently
Ken a
me.
lot. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's terrible. And I'm very glad that West Point doesn't do it. Because it's not just use, it's exploitation at that point. And I'll just say that I imagine the people in this audience, many of you may be in that kind of position. And just for what it's worth, one of the arguments we've made at West Point to stave off doing that is that we're supposed to be a moral institution. And I think most universities would like to think of themselves Not all, right? Some are. But most universities would like to think of themselves as moral institutions and as institutions that contribute to the moral development of students. And it has been a powerful experience, a powerful argument in my experience, that we can't maintain that status if we have immoral hiring practices.
Ken, you had something I think you wanted to add to that about insecurity.
I do, that if we're going to, I'll say my larger piece in a bit, but I also think we want to get to Philip as quickly as possible. Yeah. Philip, can you hear us? Philip?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Just checking. Cool. I think we should get to Philip after I say this,
okay.
Because I'm afraid of losing him again, because connection from Nigeria being what it is. That if we want to talk about what an adjunct is, I think the defining feature of an adjunct is insecurity. So not like, say, my brother who taught human anatomy classes at a community college and he's a chiropractor, but it's the insecurity of employment, that this combination of being highly educated and tenuously employed. And I think, as Cliff pointed out, it may be smaller numbers than we think they are, but it's still a very, very lousy place to be in. Yeah. If it was a question of definition, I'd say it's the insecurity of the position. To differentiate between someone who's, say, on a contract, Mike's on a 3-year contract, or someone who's a visiting assistant professor or something like that.
Right. Philip is going to talk to us about the state of the academy in Nigeria, and I'm really interested to hear what he says. Philip?
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, we got you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join, though I can't be there physically, but I would just like to speak on, what the experience is like in Nigeria in terms of lecturing within universities, in terms of the tenure track like permanent lectureship positions, and also those that serve as an adjunct. And basically, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to speak from my own experience as an adjunct in the Institute of African Studies, in the University of Ibadan, and also for some time at the Institute of Peace and Strategic Studies within the university. And
Philip? Can you see me?
Series of strike actions, especially from the section of the lecturers that we call the Union of Staff Union of Universities in Nigeria. These people basically quarrel with the government on the basis of the fact that there's poor quality of education. But I think this kind of forum that we are in is very important for us to discuss about looking inwards in terms of the academia itself and the kind of politics that goes into recruitment, which has a way of affecting the knowledge products like I discussed earlier with Ken. So, first of all, I'll try to talk about the types of adjunctification that we could have, what I call adjunctification within the university system. There are those that are formalized within the system who are basically made of, let's say, professionals, ex-servicemen, and some other guys that I think are just practiced in some parts of the world. And some others who are just like graduating students, graduating PhD students, I'll call it, like it was my own experience within the university system. And what really leads some of us to graduate from my PhD to serve as adjuncts, basically because of the challenge of having given employment. In my own case, I had to cover up for my advisor who was ill, and so I had to start teaching his courses. And at the time, he was teaching at the 2 institutes which I mentioned earlier, and I had to cover up for teaching like 5 of his courses every session. But before he left on a sick leave, he tried to see how we could formalize the system. And because of the bureaucratic bottlenecks and some other stuff, it was not possible. So for me, that for me was a sort of like an exploitation, because I was allowed to teach these courses. I wasn't given students to supervise. But as I'm speaking to you, even till I left, after 3 or 4 years of experience, I was not even given a letter of recognition, which I felt is a way of discouraging people who may, want to serve the system. I even requested to be given a letter like a volunteer within the system, so that at least it could serve that I have a teaching experience in case I want to return to the academia in the future. But another thing that leads people to this adjunct position, it's also the kind of politics that goes into the recruitment process. We are in a system whereby the certificate that you have doesn't matter as much as the kind of connections you are able to have within the system, in spite of the competence. I'm sorry I'm saying it, but I learned that these are experiences in other places, and it has to do with the kind of power relations, the connect that you have to the powers that be within the system, who could actually facilitate your recruitment. In my own case, even my dad had to go into the system at a point to speak to the deputy vice chancellor, and even write a letter to the chancellor, who he was familiar with then. And well, he didn't succeed, but I felt if I'd been recruited through that process, it didn't really serve to show the kind of competence that I have. And I'm saying this even with my interaction with some of my colleagues, who some of us feel have business within the academia, even though they have what we can regard as tenured positions within their own context. The challenge, I think, for younger people getting into the system is also the agitation for the extension of age of some professors. So I think some professors who stay longer in the system, in spite of the kind of productivity that they have, are occupying spaces that some younger ones are supposed to, occupy. For instance, these people don't carry out research, they delegate even teaching responsibilities to younger staff, and they're just, on salary. For me, this kind of contest, the one which does not actually, help the Nigerian academia, and I think it's something that we have to also work on. And so what is actually basically like what my own experience is at the moment is that younger graduates who are supposed to contribute to the system try to look for experiences elsewhere, as long as you need to keep your body and soul together to live. And so now I found myself in development world, working, of course, based on what I'm lucky to get a job in a think tank organization. But some other people would either go to the corporate world, where the money is in spite of the fact that they are not as relevant in this system. So you can see some people studying agriculture or some other stuff, working in the bank where they have no business, simply because they have to keep the body and soul together. I know this is a global challenge, but I'm saying if the challenge within the academia is rectified, perhaps more quality would have been within the system. Finally, I would also like to talk about the reward system, within the academy in terms of promotion. I know we're in a profession that emphasizes either publishing or perishing, but this has also had a very adverse effect on the academia in the sense that a lot of people just turn out very irrelevant research stuff that even their students don't even know what they're working on, and it's not even useful to them. That high quality researchers are forced to publish abroad, And what happens is that there is no really a grounding in terms of originality in the research system, simply because those that are supposed to carry out this quality research are out of the system and in other environments where they are not as relevant. And this also has a way of impacting on the larger society, because we claim there is a challenge of originality in terms of science, technology, even the humanities, trying to bring out our own innovative technological stuff from the country. So I think if we look at all this, there's a need to review the recruitment patterns and processes within the Nigerian academia in order to make now to retain the quality that is supposed to be within the system, so that the dwindling knowledge products that we're having who can serve to make them better. So I think that will be all from me for now.
Cool, thank you very much. Cool. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, Ken's going to piggyback on that. I know you had something
Cool.
to say that works really well with that.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of things to say that work really well with that. And I came in front, I don't know if you can see me still, but I want to give you a little visual feedback. So I've adjuncted, and I normally wasn't stand during roundtables, but on the other hand, with someone Skyping in, I want to be able to see me. So I've adjuncted at 2 different schools since I got my doctorate in 2010. And with Philip, oops, we lost him. All right, he'll call back. If he calls back, I'll answer it. So I've adjuncted in 2 different schools since I got my doctorate. And it really brings to light that much of what Philip said is going on in Nigeria, where it's really where it's really a patronage system, and it's a sort of a corrupt patronage system that impedes progress, is going on here in the United States. Ah, now we can see you. Brilliant. Excellent. We can see you, and we can hear you. And the one thing I've noticed is that I've taught very few different schools. I've taught at Westfield, I've taught at American International College. And the kids at Westfield are basically middle-class kids who have fairly good reading and writing skills. The kids from AIC, American International College, tend to be lesser academic skilled. There's a lot of remedial introductory coursework there. And the thing is that Westfield has a history department. Westfield has 2 full-time medievalists, John and Mark Abate. And there's the funding for this. Even though the numbers of majors are growing and the course enrollment is shrinking, it's not in a really dire straits at the history department at AIC. There's only 2 professors, and me filling in some classes occasionally, but mainly I teach composition. And the thing is that I've had conversations with administrators at AIC, and they said, our business is not to teach the liberal arts. Right? Not these kids. But these kids need is they're here for job skills, they want job skills. But that seems to me to be very, very unjust, because it's drawing a line. It's saying that the liberal arts, history, understanding critical thought is not important for these kids, right? These are the proles, right? That literally said that we're going to leave the Brontes. I know I took the Brontes up, but we'll leave that for the kids at Williams and Amherst. That's where they can study that, right? It's the rich kids. Our kids need that. Which is to say, well, that's all well and good, that our kids want to become nurses and our kids want to become cops and things like that. But it's saying that a police officer should not have an understanding of history or the liberal arts or gender theory or race theory or things like that is kind of repulsive, because it draws a class line. It says that this learning is not for you, this is for the people who shop at Whole Foods and buy yoga pants. And adjuncts, and the fact is that also schools like that, the lower tier schools, tend to use more adjuncts. It perpetuates this. So what you do is you get, in someone who's either doesn't hold a terminal degree, as Cliff was pointing out with his statistics, or somebody who, like me, is teaching 6 classes a semester, trying to teach, for very little pay, trying to teach something, and you're not getting the quality education. Amherst does not use adjuncts. Williams does not use adjuncts. None of the 5 colleges around me use adjuncts. And in fact, the adjunct system perpetuates race, class, and gender divides, which was my little piece to say, that according to Finley in 2009, between 51 to 61% of contingent faculty are women. So a majority of contingent faculty are women. I'm sorry that I got, 5 white guys sitting up here, and someone's got me from Nigeria, but I can only take the people that respond to the call for presenters, right? Finley says that while the pay gap between men and women in the United States is related in no small part to discrimination, it is also related to the fact that women tend to be employed in areas of the market that pay less than where more men work. Fields that tend to employ that more contingent faculty also tend to employ more women. Boris, Waldever Morgan, and Trunjan Dawson put it, even if you're not a woman, you're feminized. It's a feminization of labor. Adjuncts are feminized by their position as flexible, low-paid workers, a paradigm designed to cut costs. Work conditions conspired to make them feel isolated. Many teach at multiple institutions to earn a living, never establishing connections within their departments. Some internalize the lack of respect, choosing not to address their situation head-on because it is painful. They fear losing classes. And I can say that explicitly, that I've lost classes, all my classes at Westfield due to under-enrollment, and then for speaking out against I'm likely to lose my classes at EIC because I think I have a political duty to tell my students about the system and about the situation that their professor is in. As consumers of education paying a pretty penny for that, I think they have a right to know and they should know. The same thing with race. The AAUP in '93 said that, it's very old data though, that, well, let's say that 2007 data, so the latest data I have, faculty of African descent, only 5.4% of all full-time professors, including those in historically black institutions. Only 35% of those were tenured compared to 46% of white faculty. So also, adjunct faculty tends to shade African or African American. The other thing is that it's going to be is that in medieval studies specifically is that if only elite schools are hiring medievalists, right? It's the only place where they have the leisure to do this, and only they are employing us. And as a recent survey, I can't remember what it was in the Chronicle, but it was last year it came out, something like 50% of all hires come from 10 schools. This is going to produce a monoculture of thought. As Philip was saying, this whole thing with they're not producing the optimal research results. Well, you don't have, even if you have, we want diversity on your hiring line, you're not hiring a diversity of thought there, and you're going to get this monoculture. Finally, activism in the classroom is impossible because, like I said before, adjuncts, we are characterized by our instability. We're fired like that. And you can't earn credits. I can publish all I want. I can publish multiple books, articles. I don't get that. The only thing is that if there's a student complaint, everyone gets student complaints. You always have that one student who's you fail. But you can only get demerits. You can never get credit. You can never work towards anything. You can't do that. So you're living, you don't take risks in the classroom. And you don't inform people, you don't risk offending anyone, which sometimes, you don't risk challenging students on their beliefs. Because if you create trouble, you're out of there. So overall, what the system does is, both for education in general and for medieval studies, it lessens it. And I think that it's not going to change until accrediting authorities and until the Department of Education get involved. So that's my thoughts.
This Department of Education? I mean, seriously?
Yeah. Well, not the one under Trump, but well,
I would like to hear. I'd like to hear next from John, because John, I think, can piggyback on that. Coming from Westfield, he's going to talk about the rule, the 15% rule in Massachusetts, and the use of adjuncts specifically in Massachusetts schools, because it differs considerably from the use of adjuncts elsewhere. So, John, can you speak to that?
So Westfield State is part of the Massachusetts State College system, which actually is two-tiered in itself because there's a UMass system with the 4 UMasses, and then the what used to be state college system, but now we're all universities, because there are no more colleges. Unless you were a junior college, then you become a college, and then all colleges have become universities. So in the state of Massachusetts, we have a union, which is a very good thing in all the campuses. And back in the 1980s, the union had negotiated a 15% rule, which was that in each department, no more than 15% of the hours taught could be taught by an adjunct. And it was contested by the state, and we were fighting over it for a long time. It went to court. It was in court for years. It was in court for years, and it was 2.5 years ago we finally won a victory. We won a definitive victory for that 15% rule, and so it's in effect now. Here's the thing. So the union fought for that beginning like in 1987, right? This was the first one to court, like, in 87. So this is 2017, right? Yes, it is. It's a very controversial thing. There are two groups of people who don't like it. One is the state still wants to get rid of it. But here's the tricky part. A lot of our adjuncts don't want it either. Because the nature, the composition of who the adjuncts are has changed tremendously. Because historically, I think it's safe to say, the adjunct position was a training position. It was like, for using the evil analogy, it was like being a squire. In a certain sense.
I'm an apprentice.
Or
journeyman, you're a journeyman.
You're a journeyman, right? And it was a temporary thing, and it was to build your CV, and to get experience, and to make connections, and, you know, eventually the idea was within a fairly short time, you would get a tenure-track job. The percentage of adjuncts at our place who are in that traditional kind of adjunct position has gone down significantly. Because a lot of the other departments that, like business department, management, economics, they too have gone into hiring a lot of adjuncts. And the people they tend to hire are people who are in business and want to do something different on the side at night, or they want to get out of business because they've been there for 25 years and they want to teach, but they've made their money, they have a pension, they have their 401k, well, they had their business, and so this is extra money. And so those folks are saying to us, because I'm involved in the union, why are we paying dues for a union that wants to keep this cap that could mean I lose my job? Which does make sense, right? But of course, the big change is who are the adjuncts now? Because the fact of the matter is, I think, I would like to title my presentation, with the Kalamazoo, because I don't see how this Congress will continue to be a very large Congress going forward into the future. Because when I get a student coming in talking about wanting to go to graduate school, I say, well, we have to have a talk first. And it's about 25 minutes long about the perils and risks of getting a PhD anywhere. Because I just had a student, he's going to Princeton in the fall. And so you might say, well, he's going to Princeton, he's all set. Well, you know, no, because when someone applies to Westfield from Princeton, we never hire them, right? So that hurts you to be from Princeton for a third-level state school. Personally, unless the person is from that state or has family there, that's a big risk to hire them, right? So he's going to face another set of dangers anyways. He does modern Middle East. And modern Middle Eastern history, you think is kind of like, you know, is a hot topic. People from Princeton and Yale and Berkeley all have troubles getting jobs. He knows a number of people that he's met, he got his master's down at Georgetown, who are doing the kind of postdoctoral circuit at various schools. And so everyone hopes to get like a 2 or 3 year post, and that'll give you a chance and time to get, you know, an academic job. So it's a problem at the other end as well. And the thing I think about is this: if there just aren't that many new hires, and a lot of universities don't value the liberal arts in general anymore, or the humanities, or history, I mean, eventually it's going to dawn on people that there are too few positions and too many people looking for those positions. And so I think what you will have to see happen, and it's happened a little bit, is graduate programs will say, well, maybe we shouldn't take 15 people a year. Maybe it should be 5. And even with that, there's still such a backlog of people with masters and PhDs that I think eventually what's going to happen is that we're going to return to a situation a la 1907, where professors were such rare enough characters that they would be in Three Stooges short films, as coming from Europe and Germany, right? As exotic characters that are in certain places. And the rest of the places will have adjuncts, and I think what you'll see is you'll go from adjuncts who have PhDs, and then we're seeing it now in the stats you had with, adjuncts who have PhDs, to adjuncts who have MAs, to adjuncts who have high school teaching experience, right? Because at a certain level, you have to ask yourself, why go to the trauma and time and expense of the advanced degree if it's a life of working at 3 different places and teaching 5 classes. You know, that's a very hard thing to sustain, and it isn't sustainable.
I wouldn't say it. Okay, I went crazy. What I want to add to that is
Wait a second. I'm the guy in charge here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cliff's gonna jump.
This is just a quick point that just occurred to me just now. I have a daughter who's just finishing high school, and one of the things that has really exploded in the past few years is dual enrollment.
Yes.
Have you guys come across this? So in a lot of the high schools now, you can take a course that's co-offered by the high school and often the local community college, but also Syracuse University does, and so on.
I teach, not the last 2 semesters. Next semester I'll teach the new magnet communications school in the New York City school system called Mecca. Has articulation agreements with 2 of the institutions that I teach in. I teach in 3 institutions now. City College of New York and community, and we're a Manhattan community. And with the idea of a pipeline from Mecca to BMCC to CCNY and the MCA program there, where they teach advertising and public relations and the film program. And I'll be teaching media studies next semester to juniors and seniors from the high school for communications. I teach a college now course probably every 2 or 3 semesters. I'll teach what they call a college now course.
And it may be to answer the question about the career path because the better ones of those dual enrollment programs require that the high school teachers teaching those dual enrollment courses have to be qualified as adjunct instructors at the college that it's co-listed with. And it just occurred to me that those people probably count as adjunct faculty, even though they're actually full-time high school teachers who are teaching this dual enrollment course on the side. And that's a very popular thing to do now, partly because after the recession, you know, there were a lot of people who wanted to cut short their paying college degrees, and it's fairly easy to line up. If you're in a good school system, you can cut a semester or even a year off your undergraduate experience that way. So that actually may be and that's not a bad model at all, right? I mean, for an excess production of MAs and PhDs, to have them teaching full-time benefit jobs as high school, but have the additional ability to take that up a notch into the college level courses.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that they're doing this in Massachusetts, and the union, the professors' union, is a branch of the state teachers' union, K through 12. There's a whole bee's nest of problems with that too, because then you have, in the state of Massachusetts, what they would like to do is to treat all instructors from nursery school to the universities as one class of teachers that are evaluated in the same principles, and so that you create kind of like a widget factory where they have dictated at every stage the widget's development and manufacture. And so it's actually part of the industrialization of the teaching and learning education itself. Because the big mantra they always use is workforce readiness. What's the other one? Workforce readiness. Assessment. And so, yeah, it does sound good for some of the kids who might get exposed to college who otherwise wouldn't. But then you're going to ask yourself, well, that instructor in that dual enrollment course, because they do ask us to do it, but they want us to do it not as part of the ordinary contract, but as an adjunct fee. So they don't want that part of the day load, so it would have to be extra work, and it's not the same full compensation. They never want to do anything for more money.
Ken? So then we're going to get to Larry, because we haven't heard from Larry.
Yeah, we haven't heard from Larry. So I was going to be really brief in that. Part of John was talking about before this declining qualification of teachers, and that we're going to get, they want high school teachers now teaching college courses and things like that. And we see with this the declining authority of academic history and a world where anybody on the internet has got authority in history, and so we're living sort of it adds to the post-factual world. But now the historical martial arts enthusiast has as much authority as someone holding a PhD, or the reenactor has as much or more authority, and of course it gets to a world where people like Mike Pence in his recent trip to Europe, evoking our common European heritage, where they can use history in some political ways and not get called out for it, because this idea of authority and who's an authority and who can use history and what's authoritative use of history.
Well, the internet has killed expertise. The internet has killed expertise. We no longer need us PhDs for most of what we used PhDs for 40 years ago. There's no need for us in that regard. And so with that, no perceived need. That's correct. And with that in mind, there's a lot of questioning as to what they need us for at all. Right? And hey, if you can get all of your education online, right?
Or at least as much as what you're interested in.
Through Google and Wikipedia and MOOCs, right? Why on earth should you have this institution called the university with people being paid to teach classes in a building
that you might fail.
Go to, and that you might fail? Exactly. Larry, I want to hear from you.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, first on the dual enrollment question, for some of us, at least those of us under HLC, and this has been a real recent big issue, who can actually teach those courses. So you've got an MA with English who can teach composition in college, but can't actually teach the high school course. You've got somebody in high school who's got a master's in education, but can't teach the college course under the new rules. That creates a huge, huge problem. And some of you are shaking your head, Rod, I see you back there, because you're in that 19-state region, so you know what I'm talking about. So that's been a real barrel of herring for us under HLC. So
Larry, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I'd like this to be your jumping off point, if you could. Why did you leave your position?
Ooh, wow. I should say a little bit about myself. I started becoming a medievalist in the late 90s when I was actually an IT guy, and started feeling more sorry for the machines than the people. I decided that was time to switch careers. But at that time I was teaching things that we no longer teach, like basic computer skills. You don't find very many of those classes around anymore. And sticking medieval stuff in there. And then I became a graduate student, so I did the GA thing, and then I taught in the City Colleges system in Chicago, which is community colleges, and I taught there for about 3 years, and also at one of the online places. Then I got the job at Bemidji State, and I became chair, and I was hiring adjuncts, so I'm very aware of both contractual issues surrounding those as well as the HLC issues that we're facing. And now the university and I are separating our paths, let us say. Part of that is because increasingly, like everywhere else around the country, there's an increasing stress on using adjuncts and packaging classes as if you sit down and do the package, do the assembly line, and that's fine. And the root of that, in my view, is because we actually have in our country, or at least in places like mine, the adjunctification of administration. They're the true adjuncts. They have more security, they get paid more, but they don't stay around very long. They're contingent.
Yeah.
They leave, and so they want to do something to justify their next promotion. And a lot of that, of course, is bottom line peanut counting, right? Make it more financially viable. And how do you do that? Well, you cut down on your labor costs, right? I mean, and that's true just, basic econ. Any corporation, what's their number one cost? The labor it takes to produce their products. And so that's really the issue that we have in higher education is we have the adjunctification of administration who thinks that they can package what we do in ways that it just should never, ever be packaged.
Well, there's another thing too, is in the old days, right,
who were the administrators. They were people who were part of the university. They were faculty.
Yes.
You know, I mean, your final 4 years, you got to be dean or associate dean or president or whatever it was, and it was the end of your active career.
Right.
And now, what you're right, you have the hired guns who come in and say, I can, you know, cut your budget by 13% in 2 years. And
They cut the budget for teachers.
Yes.
While
Not
adding to
their
the
own,
budget
yeah.
for administrators.
Yes.
You know, and in my school, that's been true. We're spending 38% in the 6 four-year institutions in our system. We're the lowest, 38% on instruction. And administrative costs have ballooned. We're also the smallest in the system. Right? So per capita, we actually have something like 3 administrators per 50 students.
And
It's incredible.
We're laughing, and it's absurd.
And furthermore, I mean, the university is supposed to be a not-for-profit. We were talking about this downstairs before. It's supposed to be a not-for-profit. But if you look at administrators' salaries, it's nothing of the sort. That you have
Right.
college presidents being paid exorbitant amounts of money that's not going towards student instruction and will have to be competitive. I mean, true, the most highly paid employee is always a football coach, but but
not at Westfield State
not
University.
Not Westfield State University, go Owls, but
Here, I'm sure, they went to a bowl game this year.
yeah.
they
Well,
did, yeah.
here, you know, Ohio State University is, you know, maybe, you know, but it's there. If you go to Ohio State, football is not a game; it's a religion. But
Right.
but.
And it's certainly not the only institution.
And it's certainly not the only institution with that. So, but still, the top level
My brother
administrators.
went to Michigan, so tell me about it.
There's also the increasing bureaucratic costs though too. Like now you need to hire an attorney to be your Title IX guy, and you need to hire for this, that, and the other thing. But what gets behind is the guys who are actually producing the product. And there's this idea that the professors that it's just that it's like you're on an assembly line again.
Yeah.
Whereas it's nothing of the sort. That this is Kunst, you know. It's
And that feeds back into the adjunctification because it used to be assumed that much of the work of administration was actually done by the faculty through shared governance processes, right?
Right.
And the more that gets taken away from the faculty, the less there is need for the faculty to be tenure track faculty, right? Because you know you can't expect adjuncts to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you weren't expecting your faculty to do that kind of stuff because you'd rather concentrate it in the hands of highly paid administrators,
why do you need faculty?
then why do you need tenure track faculty?
Which Steve Phil wants to chime in on.
Although there is an irony.
Philip, did you have something to add to that? Hello?
Yeah, I didn't get that, but I've been following part of the, it's not been very clear, but I've been following part of the discussion. And what fascinates me is the sort of attack, that I'll call it like that, on the humanities, you know, the dwindling relevance of the humanities in the world today. And my own take on that is, if we are accepting that there's need for multidisciplinarity, that means that there's a place for the humanities in the world today. And we've seen that even in the medieval ages we're talking about, the humanities, you know, had this relevance, and some of the texts produced from this era are still relevant today, though most of them within the theological realm and stuff like that. But what I want to say is that, for me, I think those in the humanities have to sort of accept themselves in terms of the kind of the methodological, you know, input they have to contribute to scholarship. For me, I think there's an overbearing influence of the social sciences in the sense that when you try to make presentations at conferences elsewhere, there's more emphasis on the kind of methodology, which I am not against. I mean, it's important that there's a rigor that goes into research. But I think those in the social sciences have to be more tolerant of, you know, methodologies from the humanities. I've noticed that it seems when you come with certain kind of methodology, they think there's no rigor that goes into it, which I think is not totally true. That's one. Then secondly, I'm also looking at the impact of the internet, you know, that we've been talking. I mean, I could from Nigeria take classes from the US, you know, even go on YouTube and, you know, get videos, pre-made videos and stuff like that. But the fact still remains that it's not restricted to academia. I mean, this happens in some of the other professions. We're in a world where we're challenged with the fact that machines may have to take over some responsibilities that humans do. I mean, that's what we have to cope with. But we're talking of, for me, in my own context, the exploitation of the labor of certain individuals, which for me contributes more to the system. So we're not talking of the paucity or the lack of lecturers, but we're talking of people teaching within the academia whose services are still needed, but they are not getting the kind of reward they're supposed to have, within this system. And I know there are quite a number of people like that. And it's interesting for me to also learn about some of these events, in the US. So I think it's more of a moral issue than something else for me, in terms of this discourse on adjunctification. So that's what I have to say so far to the discussion.
John?
Well, I was just going to say, talking about shared governance and taking it away from faculty, there is one faculty member upon whose shoulders more and more work is placed, and that is the department chairperson.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Who has basically become like this middle-level manager at Bank of America.
Yeah.
Where they more and more forms and reports and are piled upon them. And in my place, the chairperson gets course releases based upon the number of students enrolled in that department's courses. So traditionally in history, it's been 2 course releases a semester, because we have a 4-4 system. So it's cut in half. But as my friend who just got finished 6 years of being a chairperson said, the 2 courses are far less work than what you're expected to do in the course of a semester as a chairperson.
Larry, you can speak to that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, our system is how many faculty are in your department. And so, but yeah, there's far more work to do than courses. I mean, there's the assessment work, and there's planning the courses and scheduling the courses and hiring the adjuncts and supervising the GAs. And plus, there's meetings. Administration likes meetings.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I think meetings only exist to justify administration's existence, frankly, because most meetings could be taken care of in just a very well-crafted email that's about a paragraph long. But instead, I have to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours sitting in a meeting when I've got a pile of work back on my desk. Oh yes, I also have to approve graduation plans. So I have to go through every major in the department and make sure that they've taken all the classes and gotten all the requirements, and that what they're taking next semester will actually get them through. So I have to go through every one of those every single semester to make sure that they're doing it. And that's just stuff off the top of my head.
Right.
There's stuff that I'm missing, I'm sure.
So you're talking about graduation plans reminds me of something else, a situation that I've come up against as an adjunct. In most schools that they're offloading advising and things like that to advising centers and then professionalizing advising, which of course is once taken care of by the faculty.
Right.
Now, not to say that it's not good to have professional advisors who know everything really well, and you're not going to some rushed professor who may screw it up and you have to pay it for an extra semester because you forgot to cover all the bases, which happens all the time. But the problem with professional advisors, and this has happened to me, don't go take Munshine's class, he's too hard. Because the number one thing that motivates them is retention.
Right.
Because you don't have paying customers, you don't have a school, particularly at these lower, these bottom feeder algae eater schools, that, as I'll describe certain places I may not have taught. And so you don't want to don't challenge yourself, don't go take the hard classes. And so as an adjunct, let me say this, I have a market imperative as an adjunct, I do, and this is very, very conscious, when I'm grading, the lowest I'll give anyone, unless they really screw up, is like a B-, because I can't get a reputation as being a hard grader, a tough grader, because then people don't take that. So it makes the class, relying on professional and insecure adjuncts, makes academic rigor a farce. That you need to have, it's already a farce. It's a farce if you're tenure track, because you really can't give anyone a bad grade until you have tenure anyway. But at least then you can have some rigor. Of course, then people just phone it in. But it devalues education.
It depends on how you approach it and where you are. I I'm surprised you never give less than a B minus. I give a lot of C's. I don't give a lot of D's, and F's are usually only people who don't complete the course. They get F's, right? One of the amusing things that I notice is that usually, and the story I'm going to tell is a large part my fault. Usually, people who get C's don't complain about their grades, and people who get A's never complain about their grades. People who get B's tend to complain about their grades. Right? And,
But I'm giving B's to the kids who deserve C's.
it's true. You know, people who get B's complain about their grades because they think they should have gotten an A. Most people who get C's know they deserved a C, and they're just happy to get a grade at all. Right? At least in my experience. Last semester, I had a student fight me tooth and nail over a C that I gave, and I ended up changing the grade. I did. I decided that I had been unfair in one thing, and I legitimately decided that, and ended up changing the grade. But that had to do with, and this has happened to me once or twice before, that was a class issue. That had to do with the class of the students that I have. I teach at Borough of Manhattan Community College, where many of my students come from the projects and are poor students, working poor, and are happy to be in college. I teach at City College of New York, where many of my students are solidly middle class and are, you know, the stereotype of New York City liberals. And I teach at Marymount Manhattan College for the last 2 semesters. I won't be there next semester because whoever I was replacing came back. And my students there are the children of ambassadors, international business owners, investors, bankers, top-level doctors and lawyers, and it's there is a definite class issue surrounding entitlement that as an instructor you have to be aware of. You have some students coming in who have whose sense of entitlement is class-based, and will let you know it. They definitely will let you know it. Yes, we do, and that's about where I was going to get to. We are Philip. Yes.
Yeah, I think I have to take my leave now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much.
Bye bye, Philip. Applause for Philip. So we have about officially half an hour left. There's a few things that I want to address, but I'll get to those in a minute. I do want to know some things about the audience, and I want to hear from the audience. How many in the audience are adjuncts currently? Raise your hands.
Are we counting grad students?
How many of you are graduate students? Excellent.
I'm the odd woman.
You're independent.
I'm an independent scholar. And the reason, yeah.
Lisa, you're many things, but I wouldn't necessarily call you odd.
You don't know her.
I know Lisa very well.
But no, I was going to say, I think actually one of the reasons why in midlife I decided against going back to school and getting a doctorate in history, which would have been the dream of my life, was because I was hearing about the trouble. You know, in addition to the two of you, a friend of mine who's an ABD from Chicago, who basically was told, we will never accept your thesis, go, after being an adjunct and a TA at the University of Chicago for like 20 years. And here she was, I mean, she's okay now, but I just looked at that and I thought, at this point in my life, what's the point?
You talk about academic rigor. A lot of universities have faced lawsuits over people whose dissertations were not accepted, and the university tends to lose that lawsuit all the time.
Really?
Yes, they do. They tend to lose that lawsuit. I've given you 10 years of my life and $100,000 that I've borrowed for this degree, and by refusing to give it to me over an extended period of time, you know, I'm now suing you for the degree. And I guess what happens is the university is settling more than losing the court.
Yeah.
But that tends to be a winning argument for the student.
And you're never getting a good letter of recommendation, but you
No,
know that.
you're not. And in fact, I will admit that was how my father got his doctorate as well. He from the University of Pacific many years ago. And I read Dad's dissertation; it was terrible. It was awful. I loved it dearly, but it was an awful dissertation.
Yeah.
So I want to hear more from the audience, though. Yes.
One of the things that was concerning for, I'm at Mizzou right now, and Greitens just approved a 12% budget cut on top of the 5% we had last year. So we're looking at the closure of departments. Entire departments are probably going.
Right.
We just got the news yesterday, and we've had issues in our department when you count people who are not finishing degrees, like who are not graduating. We've lost about a third of our graduate students this year. This year, we lost 9, not including the people who are graduating. Now, I'm ABD. I'm finished. That's the end of the story. But a lot of it's hitting us because our professors are leaving. We're getting hit from the state, and it's not just Missouri. I mean, Scott Walker in Wisconsin, Brownback in Kansas, Bobby Jindal in Louisiana. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Even in Massachusetts. I mean, this is not something that's just in the Midwest.
We have a Republican governor.
Yeah, it's
New Mexico.
And Charlie's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
New Mexico is even the biggest place for this.
Yeah, so what's ended up happening is, my colleagues are looking at being like, why the hell am I to continue on when I can't put together a committee, I'm getting no backing, and, in 4 or 5 years, my wife and I, we're looking outside academia. It's just like, where else can we go? Government work, private sector, because what else are you going to do?
So here's what it is for me. I'm going to respond to that because I think those guys who know me know that I've driven myself insane for the past 7 years, or even when I was ABD, but the past 7 years trying to get a tenure track job and applying. And those of you guys who know me know I do good work. I think a large part of it is it's not rational, but it's identity, right? And I'm kidding around by taking some of my class here, but I'm willing to share if anyone needs. But the thing is that so much of my self-image is that I'm a scholar. This is what I do. I'm a scholar and teacher, and this is what I do. And how could I face the anonymous strangers on the internet if I'm not this, if I'm not teaching, if I'm not doing this? How can I present myself as that? And the UMass Renaissance Center gave me a fellowship, which is just like J Store access really, and that kind of like for some reason I found that really relieving because I'm like, okay, I still have an identity as a scholar, and I think it is a bit sick of me to be in such a codependent relationship with the academy. But I think that's what it's like for a lot of people who are continuing on down this path.
I've done a lot of writing and work on that particular issue on how the reason we are scholars is because we identify ourselves as scholars, and if we do not have, there is a psychological component to this. If we do not have the ability to see ourselves as scholars, we somehow we fall into a depression, or we start to question our worth. And
that's how they can get away with the system.
Yeah. Well, and that's how they get away with the system. I was just about to bring this up. How many of you, you may have heard this because the Chronicle did an article on this not about 3 years ago. If you've looked at this from an economics point of view, the guys who wrote Freakonomics wrote about adjuncting for the Chronicle of Higher Education a few years ago. How many of you read that article? Or how many of you are familiar with Freakonomics? 1, 2, 3 of you, probably through NPR, right? Who's read the book?
Yeah.
Okay, the most famous chapter in Freakonomics, the one that got a lot of negative press, was the one about abortion. But the most famous chapter in Freakonomics is the chapter titled "Why Do So Many Drug Dealers Work at McDonald's?" And the premise was that while Hollywood creates this image of drug dealers as driving around in gold-plated Cadillac Escalades with wads of cash falling out of their pockets and guns stuck in the waistbands of their sweatpants, right, where they can fall out and shoot themselves in the thigh like a well-known football player did at the club in New York. The truth of drug dealing is that most drug dealers have to have live at home with their families and have a regular minimum wage job, and drug dealing is what they aspire to. Right? And they aspire to it because of the image, right, that's projected by Hollywood. And the authors tied this into both athletics and the arts, particularly acting. That in all of these cases, you have a huge labor pool that only wants to do this one thing in life, because that's what they aspire to. It's aspirational, it's how they identify themselves. And they are willing to put up with anything for the hopes of that incredible payoff at the end, because in the case of academia, it's not a financial payoff, but it's a prestige payoff, right? And the point of the Chronicle article was that academia works the same way. We have so many adjuncts willing to put up with this forever because they see themselves as being, we see ourselves as being academics, right? Wearing, I don't wear tweed on purpose. I wear business suits for a reason, because I want to separate myself from academics and dress like the administration. Right? You always dress like your boss, not your coworkers. It's a very good idea. But we have this aspirational attitude, right? We're willing to put up with the low pay and the horrible working conditions and everything. I have it great compared to most adjuncts because of my union and my union contract. And unfortunately, because I've been doing this, counting the time I was adjuncting in grad school, I won't count the time I was a graduate teaching fellow, counting the time that I was adjuncting while I was in grad school, I've been doing this for about 16 years. And our new contract gets me a very good health plan, and who hasn't? And an office hour. I have an office hour as an adjunct, right? Where I get paid 1 hour a week. And I just got a 3-year appointment. That was in the new contract, right? We're no longer on your annual appointments or semester appointments. I'm on a 3-year appointment now. And I'm actually going to interview for a line at one of the 3 institutions that I teach at next week. I have it much better than most adjuncts. When I started adjuncting in this class, and I was teaching at St. John's for less than half of what I'm currently making now as an adjunct, that life is truly hell. I'm a little bit more blessed. But I still want that payoff, right? And that's what we do. That's where this whole thing comes from. We allow ourselves to be exploited in the same way that, to reference one of my current favorite comedians, John Mulaney, says, he says that sometimes he feels like he's just a young Motown singer. just Larry gets that joke. He's just shiny and dumb, right? Right? Saying, "Thank you, Mr. Berry Gordy, for the $100 you'll give me for all of my songs." Right?
Or saying, as a pulp writer, or somebody like, say, Arthur Conan Doyle, who gave away the rights in perpetuity to study the Scarlet for like 25 pounds.
Yeah.
And it took a lawsuit and him paying his, the publisher of Beaton's Christmas Annual a big fat chunk of change to get the rights back to the first Sherlock Holmes story.
Yes, which is now in public domain, thank you very much. And that made me $1,600 that Study in Scarlet is in public domain. Thank you, Ken, for setting that up for me.
$1,600? Because they paid me like $400 for the last 2 weeks.
No, they paid me 16.
You have no writing Sherlock Holmes fan fiction.
They did.
No, we do introductions to faux leather bound things that are sold at Costco. I have people who like text me and say, I'm in Costco and I found a book with your name on it.
I get that too, it's great. I mean,
Classics of science fiction.
Yeah, we're H.P. Lovecraft, Arabian Nights, all of that. But it's good. I mean, it's you know. So this is what I'm doing.
I just did Western classics. I had to read Willa Cather.
Would you like?
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
I said it out of
Not
pieces.
really. Not really.
So here's the thing about the economy as a whole is the last time I was actually, because I used to do textbooks for Morgan-Hill when I was contingent there. I was contingent at Scribner's when I did academic encyclopedias. The last staff position I had, I was actually working for a pornographic magazine in 1998. That was the last time I was actually an employee. Yeah. And I don't actually admit that I've ever had that job very much, but I'm doing this in public and on YouTube and in front of like one of the 2 top guys in my field. That I used to work for a pornographic, and I'm not very proud of this fact. But I was also unemployed and living in New York City, which brings me to my other point, is that because then I wanted to work in publishing. I seem to have distinct aspirational fields. But I was able to work in publishing because I was living with my mom, and don't live with your mom when you work for a porn magazine. It's very but the other thing I want to point out is that we were able to adjunct because we're subsidized. That I stayed in a bad relationship for much longer than I should have because I wasn't making enough money. I was adjuncting to move out and get my own place. I stayed in so many people do it because their partners are making money or are able to, or their parents. Right now, I mean, right now I wouldn't be surviving if it wasn't for my parents. And my father my father is very ill, and I hate to be so. I feel like a bastard because I mean, I'm like, am I worried about my dad or am I worried about my check every month to help me pay my bloody rent? I'm not saying that everyone has a right to make a living in this world, but I mean, there's no, you can't fly without a safety net. And, this is why I drink. So, I have no idea if that made any sense.
That made perfect sense, actually.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, other questions, comments, because I can rant about all sorts of stuff right now. Yes?
The widget comment that you made resonated. I'm at a state school in Illinois, which we're going on 2 years without our budget. So finally we're to the point where we're losing 150 staff across campus. The current media says that most of it's going to be attrition and it'll only be about 30 people.
Yeah,
right, I believe that, yeah.
So having been at this university for a while, I was a TA for several years. And it started out they would back up my grade book. And I got out to the writing center, which is wonderful and safe, and I'm happy there, but a classmate had trouble with a student and got brought into the FICOM director and was told, what will the student learn if they fail? And was not allowed to fail the student. So I'm guessing from our perspective then, going into this adjunct would be where I'd start. Are we, as my kind of class, being produced as a type of scholar that is prepared to do the widget making? Like, are we being trained to make widgets? Or is what you're talking about, will that ever come back?
Are you being adequately prepared to do this? No. No, they don't. When you're in graduate school and you're writing your dissertation, the absolutely last thing that you ever deal with is pedagogy. Right?
The other thing
last
is that
thing
you
that you ever,
you're going to teach it in R1.
Right. Everybody has this vision of themselves as dealing almost exclusively with graduate students, right? And I certainly did too. I once got to, you come to this conference and you have a beer with the academic stars, right? In this field, and you see yourself as the Oxford Don. In the tweed jacket and the pipe, kind of starting to resemble Tolkien after a few years, right? But nobody prepares you for either how the administration expects you to teach, or quite often what is just the ins and outs of teaching. Most people, and this was true of me, I was terrible my first couple of years. They just threw me up in a course that I'd never even contemplated teaching, right? But that's where they had a need. This was as a graduate teaching fellow, not as an adjunct. Threw me into a course that I had no clue about, handed me a book and said, there are your students, and that was it.
Fordham prepared me to teach. We had a whole pedagogy course where we can teach Western experience too. But that's a Jesuit school, and it was a little different. And of course, there was no, it's a Jesuit school. There are no widgets in Jesuit education. There's a lot of critical thought and questioning, but I mean, and you know, non-existent God bless the Catholic Church, but you know, that may be the last refuge of the humanities, or Catholics, or rather, see, Fordham is a school in the Jesuit tradition because it's actually very liberal, very secular. I'd say the Jesuits are liberal and secular, but
at this point, almost all the Jesuit schools are
very liberal. Yeah, I mean, BC is extremely liberal. I mean, Jesuit schools are wonderful, but I was prepared to teach. I was definitely prepared to teach, and I'm really grateful, even though I hated it at the time, because I had definite ideas of
you. Cliff.
I wasn't sure. I think you guys might be misinterpreting the question.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or what you're asking, what I heard you to be saying is, it seems like one of the ways that universities and administrations are exploiting the vulnerability of adjuncts and junior teaching faculty is by getting them to go along with a type of education that is the widgetized, commodified education. That
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Which,
And
yes,
as
I think
adjuncts,
that's true.
we absolutely go along with it.
Yeah.
And that's
how we get paid.
yeah.
So in
We
10 years,
don't
we'll have-
admit that we're going along.
And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I oppose any effort at West Point to have widgetized education. You might think the military wouldn't be okay with that, but no. And yes, the military academies are really the last refuge of the liberal arts. It's surprisingly true. Because
You guys got a great bugle for it.
well, and we also have enough guns to you know, frighten off anybody who tries to take our liberal arts away. But
I've seen taps.
as I said, I'm taking my daughter around
What about
for college visits now, and it's something, you know, I pay a lot of attention to because I don't want her going into a widgetized education. And so I absolutely, and one of the pitches, we're going mostly to the, you know, the liberal arts colleges, and they all make the pitch. They say, your classes will, your daughter, if she comes here, will be taught by full-time faculty who are engaged in research and who, if they have student collaborators in their research, we don't have any graduate students here, so the students will do the undergrads. And it's, you know, it's a good pitch, right? So then the question becomes, why doesn't every parent hear that, like I hear it, and why doesn't every institution get the pressure from the parents to uphold that model? And, you know, obviously it doesn't have to be, there are good reasons to have a certain number of adjunct faculty, and there are also good reasons to have permanent adjunct faculty, permanent full-time adjunct faculty, you know, who are more focused on teaching and more professional expertise like that. But, and what you mentioned, I think, is a big part of the answer. Parents are willing to put up with it, and institutions are doing it because of government cutbacks and because of all the money that's being siphoned into the administration. I think those are the two big things. And I think the only way to reverse the trend is for parents to say, this is too expensive for me to send my kid here to be taught by somebody who has to juggle 3 different institutions and 5 different preps.
That would be a great New York Times op-ed.
But the students don't know that, though. I mean, the parents don't know that.
No, they don't. And so then the part of the question becomes, how do we communicate that to the parents? And you know, the parents who even get to the point of taking their kids to liberal arts schools do get that message.
Yeah.
I think it's a case of the emperor's new clothes. Nobody actually wants to say, we do widgetized education. Send your kid here.
But they have euphemisms for it. We have accountable and metrics and all this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Assessment, thank you.
Assessment, yes.
Yeah, retention.
Outcomes.
Here's
Outcomes, thank you, that's the word I was looking for.
Here's my big issue.
Okay.
We know that this is bad for everybody. We know it's bad for graduate programs, we know it's bad for the adjuncts, and we especially know it's bad for our students.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So why is nobody fixing it? It's simply getting worse year by year. And it doesn't matter how many studies we do that shows that this is a bad situation, even for the students who are paying us the money, we still keep doing it. Or, we, not us.
I have a theoretical answer for that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, even business leaders are saying we don't want this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you can't say it's about jobs, because they're saying we don't want this.
Well, it is about jobs in a way.
It is.
It is about jobs in a way, and the reason is because we have a surplus labor pool that we don't know what to do with. I honestly believe that. We have a surplus labor pool that we don't know what to do with, and so we're sending them to college. It's kind of a warehousing thing that we do. We had, in 1976, a person with just a bachelor's degree on average made less than, on average, a person with just a high school degree. This was because of primarily General Motors and the number of people that the auto industry employed and other manufacturing industries employed in high-paying union labor jobs. Beginning with the Carter administration, as we moved away from union organizing principles and unions as a valuable part of the American economy, and particularly after the busting of the Air Traffic Controllers Union in the 1980s, as we moved towards away from union jobs, as we moved away from manufacturing, as labor no longer became, thanks to technology in many senses, the backbone of the American economy that it once was. We don't need as many laborers as we once did. As this happened, all of the new jobs, and there weren't enough new jobs to replace the old jobs, but all of the new jobs were jobs that required advanced training in one form or another. And colleges stepped into that in many, many ways. They had already done this. Think of all the jobs that were not college jobs in 1920 that became college jobs after World War II, thanks primarily to the GI Bill. Journalism is a great example. Nursing is another great example. These are positions that you got through union hires or through apprenticeships or by starting out on the copy desk, like they like to say. You would write out, in fact, not even on the copy desk, starting out as a newsboy, right? You'd start out, that Horatio Alger myth is actually somewhat true in that people would start out as a newsboy, get into the organization, get promoted through the organization, and nobody went to school for journalism. I teach in a journalism program.
That's not true. My great-grandmother went to school for journalism.
Very few reporters went to school for journalism.
Right. Okay.
Very few reporters went to school for journalism. You want a wonderful look at that? Look, I just saw the front page on Broadway a few months ago, where they were written by a reporter who covered trials in Chicago in the 1920s. And one of the things that they do is make fun of the journalism graduate because none of the other reporters were journalists. And this was a reporter's point of view. Yes.
One of the things too, you pointed out how there was sort of this professionalization that took place with, RNs were no longer being trained by nursing schools. Instead, they were going to college, that sort of thing. Another way you can see this is in American literature, because the MFA novel is basically deadening and destroying higher American literature. People are getting an MFA, which equips them to teach creative writing somewhere, instead of actually going out and trying to get published. The creativity is boiling up from the bottom. The people who write for genre fiction. The characters are juicier, the plots are more interesting, the books are more entertaining, and you've got all these people who are writing MFA novels just long enough to get, just long enough to get a job at a school somewhere teaching creative writing. And the books, you read them, they're very well written, and a quarter of the way through, you're like, I don't care what's going on, and you put it down and you walk away and you never pick it up again.
Well, somebody said, I think it was somebody at HarperCollins, but I'm not positive, said not too long ago that really the only mainstream fiction left is fantasy literature.
Right.
Not everything is now genre.
Right,
Right.
and and the thing is that when you have a writer, a really prestigious writer like say Michael Chabon, who points this out and who writes things that are influenced by science fiction and fantasy and comic books, as long as he does, when he actually points this out, he gets slammed.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Or left those
Yeah.
sources because they're self-interested.
So there's this idea that what I'm getting back to the point I'm trying to make is that one of the issues that we are facing, right, is that the nature of higher education has changed, not just because of budget cutting and taxes, but because we now expect the university to do something entirely different than what we expected it to do in 1950, in 1900, in 1800, in 1560, right?
And actually, there's a really important point about that is that the number of tenured and tenure-track faculty since '76 has actually gone up.
Yes.
It's the percentage that has gone way,
Right.
way down.
Right.
And that, I think, reflects the very large percentage of kids going to college.
Who didn't go to college.
Who didn't go to college.
And that's why we have jobs, I
Right.
admit it, that's why I have a job.
Yeah.
But I think that the unhealthy situation is.
But part of what we're dealing with, I think, is a structure and a system and a self-identity system that was built at a time when college was a completely
Yes.
for different people for different purposes.
And when authority meant something different.
And that too, and then there's a feedback loop there into
Yep.
the decline of expertise, as you said. But that, and the British actually have this even worse, in that I've taught in Britain, and their whole university system wants to be Oxford.
Right.
And obviously, most of their students are not Oxford students. And so they, for example, don't have assigned readings usually.
Right.
They give like a list of things, here, go read some of this.
Yeah.
And then that
See you
means
later.
that a teacher can't hold the students accountable for having done a particular bit of reading because nothing is actually specifically assigned. And that works fine if you're an Oxford student, right? Because they'll go out and read the stuff, but most kids don't, and they can just skate by. But anyway, the point is that what you're dealing with is an inertia problem. But the flip side of that is that, well, we could say, oh, well, it's a different thing now, so let's all change. But the thing that would be more appropriate to maybe what college is being used for by society now wouldn't be a better thing.
No, right.
Right? It wouldn't.
Well, I mean, if we bring it back to class, let's face it, Oxford is Oxford because of who went to Oxford in the 16th century and the 15th and the 14th centuries, and who went to Oxford in those time periods was not the working class, and not even at that time the people from the middle class. It was the nobility and the gentry class that was going to Oxford. It was an incredibly elitist institution, and one of the things that we are pining for is that class-based, very elitist institution. I mean, I think it's worth owning up to that. I want to be if I want to be the Oxford Don.
I mean, what does Don mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
the priest. It's the radical
Well,
ominous.
exactly, it's a
Yes,
lore.
It's a lore. It's a lore. That kind of runs us out of time.
Doesn't
It's
include
3 o'clock.
anything.
But we're going upstairs to, we're going upstairs, I think in 210, we're doing our panel on diversity in diversity and recreation, actually, and which also brings in the questions of authority. And Mike and I were talking a bit about what we want to do for next year. What did we hit on? We said something about ideas of authority.
We've both had huge emotional, traumatic experiences in the week since we had that conversation, and I didn't write it down, so don't ask me.
I think it was something about the dissolution of authority and
No, that
in
wasn't it.
recreation or something. Wasn't it something like that, I think?
That wasn't it. We'll
Figure it out. I'll post it. I'll post it.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Where do you live?
I'd love to get that. I've got a dash to print my papers on. Remember, next section.
Oh, okay.
I do want to catch up with you.